Grand Rising, everyone. God, it is Monday the 30th. I can't believe we're rolling into October. Grand Rising. Hope everyone's doing well. Jeff, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. Thanks. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I know a lot's going on. A lot is going on. You want to talk
Oh, yeah.
about, and then we're going to touch on a question that Rocky Stucci Jr. passed through to us yesterday, and I love it, and it's a great topic to go into. So I know you want to start off with energies and what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yesterday we did kind of a brief update on what's going on here in October, and there's a lot more than I even mentioned. We're going to have Jupiter station, and it is going to go retrograde right on October 9th. And for those who are detailed minded, it's going to be right at about 12:05 a.m. on the Pacific time. So, and let me make sure I'm right on that, but I believe that is correct. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is when planets go retrograde, people always kind of freak out and say, oh my God, it's horrible. But this happens every year. All your outer planets, except Mars, will go retrograde every year. Again, from Jupiter out to Pluto, they all go retrograde for various months. And it's usually 4 to 6 months, depending on the planet. So Jupiter will then stay retrograde until this spring, which we'll get into that later. Also, we got Pluto is going to go direct. So Pluto has been retrograde, and it's going to go direct. Then this whole thing about retrograde planets and direct planets is all geocentric astronomy, which we call astrology, right? But it's essentially the orbital pattern of the Earth, and then we look at where the other planets are in juxtaposition. Depending on where they are from us, they appear to be going backwards. Again, like two cars on a freeway. One, if you're sitting in a car and you're looking at another car going slower than you, it looks like they're going backwards if you're not paying attention to the speed you're going, right? If you're a passenger, of course. So that's the analogy. And what does it mean? Well, in plain English, energetically, it's always been said to mean things change or they're retraced and reworked, etc. So that's part of what's going on here. Again, with Jupiter goes retrograde on the 9th, we got Pluto going direct on the 11th. Now, this kind of ties into some other things that are going on. Israel, I just heard this morning, has got tanks amassed on the Lebanese border, and they're ready to head in and start doing a ground incursion. So here we go. The conflict in the Middle East is very likely to get deeper and go on for a longer period of time. And again, if Iran is backed by some of the BRICS nations, you don't know what can happen here. This conflict could widen quite a bit. Also, on the other side of the fence, we have this horrible Hurricane Helene that just happened, and the death toll is so much higher. And I'm getting a lot of conspiracy theory reports, which may not be conspiracy theories, about the path that it took, and also too that there might be a whole bunch of lithium under the ground there. How about that? Anyways, we won't mention weather control or anything like that because that's just not allowed here. We don't want to get banned. Anyways, but I would tell you a lot of interesting things going on in the world right now. And of course, this election is going to be front and center here for the next, up until November 5th. It's going to be virtual insanity. We're going to get attacked from all sides, and that's just the way it is. So, yeah, that's some of the big things that I wanted to cover. And again, we got this new moon eclipse coming up here right on Wednesday, the 2nd. And as I had mentioned yesterday, it's pretty powerful. So.
You bet. It really is. I said it yesterday, but I can feel it coming. I am emotional and off. I know it's be interesting to see what happens, but I know it's that moon's landing in my 5th house.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I didn't switch over to you.
Yeah, but, we're trying something new, everyone. It's this StreamYard thing, and Jeff's got control when we each speak. So I was just talking. I think everybody heard me, but I couldn't
Oh
see.
yeah, they heard you. Oh yeah, they went good. One thing you could do is next to your microphone on your little picture, hit those three dots, go to edit mic settings, and check echo cancellation, because I seem to be echoing through on your mic, so you might want to just do that real quick. So you'll see that on the screen there. If you go next to your little picture, there's the three little dots and select echo cancellation. So, anyways, yeah. So what was the thing you wanted to mention about that a client had brought in here?
Oh, so Rocky Stucci Jr., he posed a question yesterday. In a birth chart, is possible to see if an individual could achieve moksha or spiritual ascension as it's known in the West? Do Raj yogas or yogas help indicate this, or is this based on free will? I love this question.
Love this question too. No, that is such a great question, because I'll tell you why. Absolutely, that is the fundamental foundations of Nadi and Vedic astrology. Again, astrology really got kind of watered down into this woo-woo predicting the future stuff, and got really discredited by a lot of the Western religions. But when you get back in India and Tibet and these very spiritual practices, they really looked at astrology, in my opinion, much more accurately. And that is, you are not your astrology. You're not your sun sign like everybody says. Everybody runs around, calls you an Aries, a Pisces, a Taurus, or whatever else you are, right? That's where your sun is. But that's in the tropical zodiac. See, Vedic astrology is a whole bunch different. And so is Nadi astrology, spelled Nadi. Some people put a double A in there. But here's the point. It is looking at signifactors in your chart and yogas. Now, what does all that mean in plain English? Well, the sun is the father. The moon is the mother in the birth chart of every individual. And you can look at the father's life and general traits from the position of the chart, the mother as well. Also the siblings, if you have them. You can even look at the grandparents. You can look at a wife. You can look at a husband. You can look at siblings, all this. Amazing, absolutely amazing. But the other side of the coin is, and that's to answer the question, is you can see by juxtapositions, particularly of the moon, Ketu, and Jupiter. So you have to remember, they think a lot differently than we do in the West. And that's what I love about these ancient techniques, because it really looks at us as spiritual beings having a physical experience. And these yogas really form exactly the conditions of a person's life. And it also shows cycles through the dashas. But how you can see if someone's likely to gain what they call moksha. See, moksha is a strange word that means enlightenment. And let me put this on the screen, because this is pretty interesting. And I'll just give you this diagram. And this diagram is actually one that I use quite a bit, because it is, you guys have probably seen it before, but it's very useful. Why? Because let me get my screen up here. Again, I'm on a different system, so we're going to jump over here and do this. Okay, here we go. So I want to get up this particular diagram right here. This is one of my favorite diagrams to show. And the reason why, you can see on here what's so useful about this. And there's a lot of people who've been coming out on the internet who talk about how we're wiped out when we reincarnate, and that we're kind of trapped here in what we would call the soul's path back and forth through various incarnations. Well, what's interesting is this big, thick dashed line is kind of the vision, what psychology might call the conscious mind down here, and the so-called subconscious mind up here. And you can see Saturn, if you look at it, it is the cross over the crescent of the moon. You see, so it is, everything comes from the circle, which is the seed or the sun, the moon, which is the crucible, and the cross, which is spiritual or physical manifestation combination, or you could say spirit being manifest into the physical world. And I always say the earth, no matter how much we're all having a hard time getting through what we get through, I can tell you that the earth is a very sacred place where spirit manifests, in my opinion. And what's, again, I always say this diagram, again, I use a lot. And the reason why is it's very descriptive. And you can see This is what we call the Yetziratic worlds, where the heavens form into planets, stars, and amino acids and rotating galaxies, all that stuff. And this is where good and evil seems to be imprisoned. And the theory is that we get entrapped into these reincarnational loops until we purify and rectify the soul. This is very well defined in a book called the Sharar HaGilgam, which is, I mention a lot as well. I'll put that on the screen so people can see it if they ever want to order it. This is an amazing book. Love this book here. Let me see if I can't get this up in icons and I can actually see what I'm selecting here. But I'll put it on the screen so people can see. And it actually has this model in, here it is, right here. This is the Sharar HaGilgam. You can see it on the screen. And see, Sharar, or Shareh in Aramaic and Hebrew, means gate. And HaGilgam means cycling of the souls. And what I love about this particular book is it clearly shows that the human form is spirit into matter. You see, up here, this is where Keter is, or also the highest, you could say, Godhead of the soul. Then you got Hokmah, which is wisdom of the soul. This is Saturn right here. In fact, the Aramaic Hebrew word for Saturn is binyan, the tree of life. And notice it also matches the neshama, which is considered to be the karmic bondage that we're in these incarnations and lifetimes. This, by the way, is Mars. That is Jupiter. That is the sun. This is Mercury. That's Venus. And that is the moon called Yesod. See, notice it says Hesed through Yesod. See, these are all just Aramaic Hebrew words. Hesed is Jupiter. See, and you got all these names. So I'll put that up some other time. But see, Malachus means the earth. That is the nefesh. That is the lower conscious mind. So once you start getting past all the nomenclature and start understanding the basic tenets of what they're saying in this, absolutely profound. And I mean profound. Here's another diagram that might elucidate this just a little bit more. You see, here we are in these meat suits called bodies below. So our lower conscious mind is really the interface. I call it the keyboard, the mouse, and the screen, or if you like the steering wheel, the gas pedal, and the brakes, to the five senses. Look at a baby when they're born. They can't see, hear, talk, or walk, right? But the cool thing is by the time we start getting near the end of the first year, many are talking or mouthing words. They're standing up. Some are even walking. So the body is forming with the lower conscious mind, but it's not us. It's the vehicle we get to practice having spirit in this physical form. And the mysterious thing is, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories around this, where the moon is involved with Saturn. Why? Because the moon is what they call the lower conscious mind, also known as the nefesh. Now, to answer the question, can you see in astrology the yogas and also the various different positions of the planets? The answer is yes. I'm trying to get back to my other diagram here. So, and what's here, that's the diagram I wanted. And the reason why is, notice the lower conscious mind is the nefesh, and it's also represented by the moon. And I always mention this to people, the eclipse points are the movie we're playing. So K2 rules moksha, liberation, or separation from this physical world of karma. So you have to examine in the chart where K2 is. Usually very spiritually advanced people will have aspects of K2 to Jupiter. That's the first sign. In fact, that's how they knew the Dalai Lama was born, all this different stuff. So they usually can tell these configurations by, or a Vedic astrologer can, by looking at the juxtapositions of K2 and Jupiter. Now, that's only one. You also have to look at the signs it's in. Furthermore, you have to look at where the moon is. And see, the moon is an all-important placement in every chart. Why? Because everyone's going to have Saturn, the planet of karmic. I call Saturn the karmic gunny sack. It's literally the cross over the crescent of the moon. And notice there's that word again, neshama, which notice what it says here, the soul's bondage to incarnations. You see? So you'll usually find Saturn has to be strong within there for that soul to be more advanced. I find like debilitated Saturns or Saturn's poorly aspected, that soul's going through a lot of trials and tribulations. And it's not just the signs. You have to look at all the aspects in yogas. Not simple at all. And you also look at the nakshatras. So when you come right down to it, it's a formidable job to really understand, exactly how this stuff works. But you can see, usually I find one indicator is if the moon is in the 12th house, that soul has gone through a lot of emotional drama. Why the 12th house psychologically is a lot of drama or a lot of spiritual negation, or I should say spiritual advancement because of the negation of the physical world. So not a simple answer. There's not just one, oh, there it is, you're going to escape from Alcatraz and move on. But you'll usually, because every soul is so different. And this is what is so profound about Nadi and Vedic astrology, is that you're really looking at the print of a soul having a physical experience, and no two souls are exactly the same. And you're connected to your soul roots, which is way deeper than any astrologer, any psychic, any intuitive, or for that matter, anyone is going to find out using these things called brains, because I think it's far above human comprehension. The angels and the divinity of human incarnation, even though many of us have very tough lives, is really far beyond, I think, human analysis. It's a very sacred thing. Just think about what happens when a woman conceives a child, or an animal conceives an embryo, or a seed goes in the ground. What you've got here, the planet Earth is a sacred, literal transformational machine that takes spirit and puts it into matter. And think about that one. And we can replicate, we can try and clone, we can splice the genes and alter and all that, but try and ensoul something, into a physically organic, functioning, healing, growing body. You figure that one out, you let me know. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't know if we can figure that one out. But so how does free will fit into all of this, though?
I think it totally fits in, because see, and this is where I really agree with the religions. Free will is key, because remember, our third eye chakra emits thought form elementals. So what we believe or allow ourselves to believe, I always get worried about that word belief, right? But whatever we hold as dear to us, they call it dear to the heart, or whatever your driving egoic, goals are, is what you become. You do become what you think about. So we all have the karmic energy that we all have to experience. But see, this gets into the divisions of karma, which is deep, deep, deep stuff. And that's, again, I have to credit Nadi and Vedic astrology, because they talk about all these divisions of karmas. Now, I could rattle off the names for you, but it's not going to make that much sense. Like Prarabdha karma, Sanchita karma. There's all these different things that there's karmas you are born with. That's the lineage of the family. And all of us are in a bondage to our family, good or ill, when we're born. When a baby's born, they are completely at the whim of the parents. If the parents are successful and can afford a lot of things and provide a good environment, great. But how many people live in poverty throughout this world? Us Americans are a little bit spoiled. We live, for the most part, even poverty level here is better than some of the conditions people are living in very war-torn and poor countries. You look at India, you look at Africa, you look at some of these places in South America. These poor people are really living tough lives. I mean, they're living, back again 100, like we would have been 150 years ago, and there's people still using outhouses and going to the public fountain to carry water home. So I know I've got some clients in South America and various different places that I talk to, and India as well, that you hear about this. So we're all living in different karmic conditions that we were born into. But the free will comes in because we all have our egoic center of self. See, this is where sun sign astrology came in, is because the sun is the egoic sense of self. That's what makes me, me, and you, and everybody else who they are. But it's really just the temporary existence. Well, here's where the religions were right. And that is, when people hold anger and violence and hatred, they bind themselves psychically to these other souls in a very negative way. And if it's strong enough, it keeps reincarnating. One of my favorite books that I always mention is by Rabbi Yehuda. It's called Menot Yehuda. And absolutely stunning, because he has 200 pages of stories of depossessions he did. This is back in the 1800s. He started out in Baghdad, I think in the it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was in Baghdad as a rabbi, and he would be called in to depossess people who would get schizophrenia, multiple personality disorders, or they would go into comas. And he would find some soul had come in on them, or spirit, and he would dislodge them. And the stories are incredible. 200 pages is how long chapter 88 in that book is. Story after story after story after story, where he would look at a soul who was trapped in the reincarnational bondages of reincarnation. And he would find and read their Akashic records on their souls, and he would find out, oh my God, you just killed somebody because somebody killed you and you came back and killed them. All these different stories that you just can't make up. And here's the cool thing. When he released the soul, the person who had the schizophrenia, just like Dr. Carl Wicklund, no different, who 100 years later wrote the book 30 Years Among the Dead, and many of those other books I mentioned by doctors and psychiatrists who have delved into this whole reincarnational bondage thing of us in the earthly plane here. The earth is a soul cauldron. That's why I say it's stuck on spin cycle. We're all in the wash machine, right? So that's just the way it is. So
yeah, we are. We're stuck. We're stuck here, experiencing though, right? That's how I have to look at life right now in order to get through certain times that are challenging. It's an experience I have to have, and hopefully to attain moksha, right? I don't have those placements in my chart, unfortunately, but I still see this is the free will. I still hope and pray I do attain that in this lifetime.
Well, that's a great point you bring up, because now, again, I have to credit the religions, not all of them, but many of there's actually a text it's a rabbinical text called the Share Teshuvah, which is different than the Share HaGilgul. See, Share always means gates. And the Share Teshuvah means releasement on the soul. And there's all these prayers and psalms within this thing, and modalities and fasting. There's actually another set of texts that I got is really amazing. It's called The Gates of Consciousness. And I can't remember the exact text. I got it in the other room. But it's a series of texts written by Rabbi Luria and others that are chants, fastings, prayers, and permutations that you read to release the soul. And what's interesting is the demonic forces do want to keep us here. So, this is a lot bigger than just astrology. What we're really looking at here is astrology is the roadmap that you're on in terms of karma. But if there wasn't free will, we'd be totally screwed. You have a choice. I always say the most powerful thing in the universe is reaction. So why do you want to look at astrology? Well, to see, the crap storm you're in or the road you're on. Because again, I analyze this stuff to a road. We're all on a road, and we're all dealing with our perception of reality and our outlook on who we believe we are versus all the things coming at us. And it's our reaction to that binds karmas. And that's why the angels tie us into these bodies with specific lessons to be learned. So I say literally the earth is a soul cauldron, and the astrology surrounding it is the matrix that prints the soul's journey and lesson in this incarnation. Most of us are not going to live to 100. I hope we do. I hope we live to 150 or 200 like the saints and the prophets did. We should be able to if they weren't poisoning the air, the water, and the food. But bottom line is, most of us will see a lifetime somewhere in the 70s to 100, right? Give or take. And what's interesting about that is the consciousness that we leave this body with is everything. And that is free will. See, and this is exactly what Dr. Carl Wicklund, the very famous psychiatrist I mentioned, the book 30 Years Among the Dead, talks about. And Rabbi Yehuda, same thing, is that soul's conscious awareness is what binds us to reincarnation. You see, because we're looking out of our eyes, we're listening with our ears and feeling and touching and smelling and all that with the five senses, but we have intuition and we do have free will. And that's a thing, again, what really attracted me to the whole corpus of ancient Egyptian, Vedic, and Nadi astrology is because it was really looking much broader at what is astrology and what isn't astrology. People get caught into the trap all the time of just looking at their astrology. Tell me when it's going to get better. Well, then you get on the other side where people are talking about setting goals and educating themselves and learning and getting skill sets and so on and so forth. And see, the demonic forces love drugs. They love alcohol. They love keeping you in depression. Why? Because that's what keeps you reincarnating. Because when you leave this soul, I should say when you leave this body, when the soul leaves the body, that is literally the consciousness that you're going to end up with in the astral planes. And a conscious, self-aware soul is much harder to trick when they understand that they're just a sojourner here. That's, again, why I mentioned the movie Avatar. It was a really cool movie, even though I didn't like the movie that much. But it was what I think resonated with so many people was this lying down, going into this astral world and becoming this other vicarious life that you would go play in this incredible world, right? And that's really what we are. And it's a shame that this isn't, I think, brought out more, where all of us don't realize that what they're doing with the fluoridation and the springs and the food additives and all that are literally dumbing down and calcifying the pineal gland, which is one path and gateway in the physical brain that connects to the spiritual upper portions of the soul. And that's talked about a lot in many different religions. In India and in Tibet, they would give you a bunch of herbs and purify you. You'd literally be throwing up and just purifying the body, getting rid of all this crap so that you could fast and get into a very spiritual mode. We can do this here in the West by just going on lemon water fasts. And what happens is the body, like Pac-Man, is just trying to go out and get all the proteins, and it's eating up all the toxins. I mean, when you really look at the body, it's absolutely incredible. And free will is definitely a wonderful thing to be aware that we all have, no matter how bad our conditions are. And some people are in some really bad conditions. You hear this all the time. People are put in prisons, and they get this awakening and they come out spiritually enlightened. And, the earth is a tough place. It's not an easy place. So, yeah. So
Interesting. So interesting, Jeff. I mean, so
you
deep.
can talk about this stuff till the end of time.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back. We'll be back on Thursday. I'm so sorry. It looks like we're going to be taking a question or two because the questions are Jeff's came very. I see everyone's questions here. We're going to roll over to Thursday. Magical Vibes, Melissa. We're going to roll over to Thursday. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Safe.
All right.
Spiritual.
You bet. You all take care now.
Take care. See you next time Thursday.
Bye.